Welcome to Vogue Code Summit Future Foodies panel. I'm your host, Charlie Calver, and I'm stoked to be here with our panelists. We have Nicole Robinson from Lyro Robotics and Sarah Nolet from Agritech fund Tenacious Ventures. Today we're going to chat about the future of food and explore how technology is shaking up the way we produce, eat, and think about food. We've got a lot to talk about today, so let's dive in. But before we get really started, Nicole, can you tell us a bit about yourself and your background?
Happy to do that. Fantastic to be here as well. I'm Dr. Nicole Robinson. I'm the co-founder and CEO of Lyro Robotics. I've been working in robotics for around 8 or 9 years now. I've always been fascinated in computer science and making technology do interesting things. We founded Lyro Robotics in 2019, and we've been operating around Australia and soon to be international in the next few months.
And Sarah?
Yeah, Sarah Nolet, managing partner, co-founder at Tenacious Ventures. We are a venture firm investing all along the ag and food value chain in climate-smart solutions for the future of food and agriculture. My background's in engineering and psychology and from America originally, as you can tell. One highlight of our fund that I'm really proud of and relevant for an audience today is 50% of the companies that we've backed have female founders or co-founders, well above the industry average. And so not something we sell for, not a quota we have. We actually look through a climate impact lens, but one of the outcomes of what we do that we're really proud of.
Amazing. Nicole, can you give us a lowdown on how intelligent robotic systems like the ones that Lyro Robotics make actually work?
Absolutely. So at Lyro Robotics, we focus on picking and packing for the food supply chain. So ensuring that robots are supporting the process of getting fruits, vegetables, other natural products and food products ready for distribution and getting them to supermarkets and overseas for exportation. So there's a lot that goes on. I think we take a lot for granted on what we think is very simple to do, but we have to think about how we can break that down into a series of steps of what a robot could be trained to do. We use a lot of computer vision, so that's looking at the environment and being able to perceive things in the environment, making assumptions about the different kinds of ways that items move, the different properties that those items will have, and thinking about how we can train robots to pick it up and manipulate them in their hands. No two pieces of fruit and vegetable are the same, so it requires a system that enables dynamic thinking and being able to extrapolate properties to then ensure that that same system works across a variety of different fruits and vegetables. Traditionally, automation has been robots without eyes, for example. So you do the same task over and over, but you don't actually see what you're doing, or you don't actually understand the dynamic and changing environment, whereas robotics is being able to perceive the environment, address different changes, and be able to adapt to different types of areas of which a robot works in. And I think it's a fantastic timing and opportunity to bring it to the food industry, because there's great value and volume of food that needs to be processed, and we haven't had machines in the past to be able to support Australian agriculture and international agriculture to do that.
It's pretty amazing. If you get a chance, go to Lyro Robotics website, and they've got these great videos of the robots in action, and it's cool to watch. Sarah, in your career, you spend a lot of time looking forward, looking at companies that will be shaping the future of our world. Imagine we're dining in 2040. What tech will we be sort of using at the dining table? Like, will we be eating in virtual reality or, using AI? But also, how is that food going to be coming to our tables?
I think there's no one answer to this question, and that's part of the exciting, it'll be more personal, it'll be more convenient when we need it, but more experiential when we need it. And that experiential one is one we've thought a lot about. We've invested in a company called Vogue Food. They create protein or animal products from cells rather than from animals, and so do this entirely without animal agriculture. And what they're doing is, instead of competing with existing products, instead of saying, well, if we can make anything in a lab, why would we compete with things that producers are really good at making? Why don't we create a whole new experience? And so whether it's a mammoth meatball or whether it's quail or crocodile, but whole new eating experiences. And so that's one of the things I think we have to look forward to in the future. Another one is really breaking some of these trade-offs. So right now, again, we think, oh, meat bad, plants good, or some of these dichotomies. And I think that's really not the complexity we need to embrace if we're going to solve big challenges like climate. So we'll have more blended products, things that mix plants and animals, things that have a real data-driven sustainability angle, so that when we make choices as consumers, we really can be confident that we're aligning with our values. And so I think that goes all the way back along the supply chain as well, and whatever our values want to support, whether that's regional communities or climate smart practices, we'll actually have the information to be able to make those choices.
Absolutely. And Nicole, you've spent a lot of time studying, you spent a lot of time on university campuses and stuff like that, but now you're spending a lot of time with agricultural communities. How open have those traditional farming communities been to your robotic technology? Have you found them skeptical or perhaps more open than you expected?
This is a really important question, and I think something that comes up quite a lot. The short answer first is there's been a lot of interest in robotic machinery and different technologies that can help improve processes in the shed. So when we do talk to clients and customers, they have volumes of fruit, vegetables, and other food products that they want to process and get into the food supply chain as fast as possible. It has a shelf life, and that shelf life has dollar value attached to it. And we want to make sure that all the food that we're growing, all the resources, time, water, labor that we're putting in, does ensure that it gets to the consumer on a timely basis. So we have found that there's been a lot of interest. There's been a lot of understanding that new machinery is available. I think the growing community and farmers are quite entrepreneurial in spirit. They know that they have a problem, they know that they need help, or they want to find machinery to help solve that problem, and they're willing to take risks, and they're willing to talk to companies at different stages of product market fit, from very early concepts through to well-commercialized products, to ensure that they can support their process. Around 80 or 90% of the food industry, when food is brought in, washed, graded, and packed, is already automated. So a lot of these growers already have a lot of familiarity with machinery, and this is providing additional extra support for them. In some instances and in certain rural communities, there can be labor shortages, in which it's harder to find labor at the right time. So if you think of a harvest like mango season, you've got to get all of that fruit packed and through the food supply chain in a really short amount of time, but you need the right amount of people to do it on site as well. So what we're seeing is a blend of moving towards a human and a robot workforce to support, but robots really, they're just another type of machinery and equipment. It's just another tool that farmers and growers can use to help improve their businesses, to stay competitive in global and international markets, and to ensure that they're using every advantage possible to make sure that us as consumers are getting fresh fruit and vegetables at the best time that we want it, and helping to support better prices for us as well.
Yeah, I think it's, oh, sorry.
Oh, I was just going to pick up on the labor point. We've invested in a company that builds robots for on-farm use, so reducing chemical usage, reducing soil compaction, and helping farmers get more done in less hours, fewer hours. And one of the questions this company, Swarm Farm Robotics, always gets asked is, oh, well, you're taking away jobs. Like, that's regional communities. What does the future look like? And their experience is actually the opposite. There's so few jobs in these areas, farmers can't get the labor that they need. And the labor that does come back to regional communities, probably not surprisingly, wants to work on the farm with the robot. And so I think some of the challenges that we need to take on when we're talking about the intersection of technology and culture and society is like some of those unintended positive consequences, and really changing the narrative around how technology can be integrated with communities.
Yeah, that's an excellent point. And Sarah, you said you got your background in psychology, engineering psychology. How might tech change our relationship and how we think about our food and also farming as an industry?
Yeah, one of the things we've seen over the last couple decades is really we're getting a little bit further away from farming, and we might sit in rooms like this, and our perception of what it's really like in boots on the ground in agriculture is actually diverging a little bit from the reality. What's so exciting about technology is starting to bring those things closer together. I spent much time taking an accidental gap year in South America. That's actually how I got interested in food and agriculture in the first place. And I was, harvesting tomatoes and learning about sustainability and production agriculture on the ground. And then I came back to the States in the giant supermarkets that we have over there. And I remember just feeling so overwhelmed. Like, do I pick the yogurt that has the plastic that's better, or is it organic? And like, you want to make these choices, and you want to have that connection to where stuff comes from, but it's super hard. And so I think that's really where technology can help to break some of those trade-offs, to actually make better decisions and to connect more with where food comes from, and to have those experiences and cultural experiences of when we eat it that can be really authentic, but also, fit into our busy lives.
Absolutely. Nicole, agriculture is facing some big challenges. One of them is feeding a growing population. Another big one is doing that sustainably. What are some environmental impacts that deploying robotics into large-scale ag operations have? And can you give us some examples of how they align with the UN Sustainable Development Goals?
Yeah, absolutely. Robotics can impact a variety of different processes in the food supply chain and system, and therefore have residual effects onto those sustainable development goals. Zero hunger is something that we've been working towards, and using robotics to ensure that we can get the highest yield, and to make sure that when we have harvested the food, it has the best chance of getting on the dinner table, or in restaurants or in other places, to ensure that it is likely to be consumed. When we think about it, we have months and months of growing seasons. We have fertilizer, water, we have a variety of different resources that are going into it. So it's really important that we don't, waste any of that if possible when it comes to harvest time. When we think about robots, we also look to moving more towards renewable energies as well. So we have technologies that are running on clean energy, and that can also be collected on farm and on site as well, so that we can ensure that we're supporting a more sustainable use of robots in that sense. For other areas, when we look at, on-farm training, when robots are deployed, they can continue to operate, day in and day out, and make sure that we're processing things as fast as possible. We can also look at it from a hygiene perspective as well, with robots only having a single touch point on fruit and vegetable too. When we think about carbon emissions as well, around 8 to 10% of global carbon emissions can be attributed to unconsumed food. In some instances, maybe 20 or 30% if there's been a bad harvest, or we haven't got the right labour, or we can't get the right equipment to process it, that might not even leave the farm at that point. That's a huge amount of food that's sitting around and doesn't get to consumers. So being able to use every advantage possible from a robotics perspective to ensure that we have the best impact on the environment is really important to me. One of the things I was really driven to do Lyro Robotics for was robots for good. And how can we deploy robotic systems in something that is critical to everyone in this room, which is resilience of the food supply chain and ensuring we have good quality food, on our dinner table at the end of the day. And there's a lot of different ways that robots will help support that. In-field, out-of-field, secondary processing, and all the other auxiliary services around it. But I think it's something that we're very actively focused on, and we also see a lot of movement to sustainable packaging, with robots being compatible with sustainable packaging as well. So I think we're taking steps in the right direction.
Absolutely, and I think, with a challenge this big, it's all about taking those steps in the right direction. We know climate change is the villain of our time. Sarah, what emerging ag tech do you see that is saving the planet faster than we're harming it?
Well, it is literally all I think about, because that's what Tenacious Ventures does. So we invest in technologies along the agri-food value chain, but we positively screen for climate impacts. So whether that's decarbonization or adaptation and resilience. And the way we think about that is we need commercial incentives. We need to harvest our selfishness to drive change. And so we need it both to be good commercially and good environmentally. And so we see things like packaging, where thus far it's kind of been a trade-off, right? We're like, oh, this bio-based solution, but then my straw melts, or then my cup deteriorates, and it really kind of sucks, right? Or this food, maybe it's healthier, but it just doesn't taste as good. And so we're really looking for companies that break those trade-offs using technology. And one that's touching on the waste point that Nicole raised is a company called GoTerra, and their waste management technology that is, think of a shipping container unit. Inside of it are literally maggots, not lying, so insect larvae that can eat organic waste. Now, maybe sounds gross, but it's food waste. It is pretty gross, right? What comes out of the back of a hotel or a restaurant chain, that's what bugs eat. And so they've built technology, robotics, to manage those insects to eat all that food waste. By putting it on site, you cut out the cost of transport. Waste is really heavy, so there's an economic advantage. And then you reduce all the emissions from that waste going to landfill. Now, pretty interesting solution, combination of biological innovation, technological innovation, massive climate impact, but real economic impact. And that's why they have customers like Woolworths, and they just signed the city of Sydney, and Albury City Council, and the Melbourne Airport becoming the first airport internationally to use that kind of technology to have a zero waste footprint. And so we're really seeing these companies break that trade-off between the economic outcome and our selfish incentives and that climate impact that we absolutely need.
That's a great technology.
Maggot robots, yeah.
Putting the maggots to work.
That's right, exactly.
I'll get this question from an answer from both of you. Maybe we'll start with you, Nicole. Where do you see the future of food production in the next 10 to 20 years, with the integration of robotics and AI and all these buzzwords that we're going to be hearing a lot of today? Where's that going to take us in the future of ag?
Yeah, there's a lot of different ways that it can go. For us at Lyro Robotics, we'll continue to ensure that we can make equipment available at the time that it's needed to support processing throughput and ensure that it can get into the food supply chain as fast as possible. I do see more robots coming for the purpose of supporting these processes. More people want access to fresh quality goods, and they want it at an affordable price and in a locality where it's not coming from too far away when we think about sustainability of transportation of those fruits and vegetables too. I think more towards precision farming to ensure that we're using the minimal amounts needed for the maximal amount of yield. There's been fantastic advancements in artificial intelligence to ensure that we're only killing weeds exactly as they're needed with the bare minimum amount to ensure that we can process fruits and vegetables faster so it's better quality as it's coming to you, and there's less sort of any disease or anything that's detected that would make it perish faster or anything like that. For the food supply chain, there's been interest in getting robots to support a wide variety of different types of tasks in this area. Packing for bento boxes, packing for airports, packing for hotel chains, packing for meal delivery kits, e-grocery. All of these different areas are moving to this sort of, dark warehouse style applications where when we're doing our online shopping, we want to have all of that put together and we want to make sure that we have that delivered to our door in a timely manner. And part of that is also the picking, placing, packaging and processing of those foods too. So I'm really excited, optimistic about where we're going in the future. I see a lot of fantastic agricultural robotics and AI companies coming through the pipeline, some that Sarah have supported, which is fantastic, others that are international, starting to come to Australia. But I think in field, on site, in workshops, there's going to be more and more. We may not see them, but they are there and they're working really hard for us, so we get the benefit out of it.
Amazing. And Sarah?
Yeah, when I think about the future of agri-food, one of the things that, again, touching on my intro, I'm really proud of is just the range of jobs that we'll need in this space. And again, it's an area where I think commercial outcomes and impact are super aligned. And so if I think of our founders, we see entomologists, that studied insect farming, actually in a different company than the one I mentioned. We see mechatronic engineers, we see wool classers, but we also see McKinsey consultants and, ex-Combank executives. And so we see tons of diversity in the kinds of jobs and in where people come from. And I guess that's something that is really exciting when I see these companies scale up and the kinds of talent they're recruiting is it's not the traditional, jobs we might think of on a farm, let alone the kind of jobs we might think of in a startup. There are artificial intelligence engineers, there are people looking at how to engage with consumers and talk about maggot robots. Like, that's not a job that anyone's ever had before, right? And so I think the range of opportunities in the agri-food system to do good and do well are broadening, and that's something I'm super excited about.
People have always told me, we'll be doing jobs and careers that no one's heard of in 10 years. This
There's
is the
one of
space where it's going to be happening. We've got some really good questions from the audience that we'll move on to now. Nicole, let's start with you. Is Australia a leader or a laggard in robotics? And is there more corporates or government should be doing to expand capability?
Yeah, Australia has phenomenal robotics talent. We've had a variety of different really high impact research centres that have brought people from overseas to want to come to Australia and work in robotics. I think there have been some really fantastic innovations that perhaps just don't get as much airtime as they could, or maybe compared to other counterparts around the world. For example, there is a autonomous robot that's currently protecting the Great Barrier Reef, restoring coral, and doing everything it can for surveillance and ensuring that we can take timely measurements of what's happening. But it's not a robot that many people hear about, and I think we need to showcase and highlight a lot more of the robotic impact that we do in Australia. There are some world first systems coming out of startups and in those that are in established companies that we just need to raise the profile of and get behind and start to cheer for on an international scale. In terms of what sort of governments and corporates can do to support this, I think there's already been a lot of chatter from the federal level and the state level around robotics and AI becoming a much more important focus in our national strategy. I agree, we do have a lot of great AI talent in Australia, and we want to make sure we can provide them with high quality jobs and opportunities to create and grow and build really interesting products. So they'll stay here and continue to make great change and waves in the space. Even our universities at this point in time, engineering is absolutely exploding with student numbers, wanting to get into mechatronics, robotics, mechanical engineering, robotics, electrical, AI, everything like that, and more women as well. It's really, really exciting to see that more younger women are wanting to come through and contribute to the engineering and building big problems, particularly those that are very environmental focused as well. So I think we have the student pipeline, the younger interest of those coming through that are wanting to contribute. We have some fantastic startups that are really getting some really good traction, and we want to make sure that we can do everything we can to get our robots outside of Australia and making some good global impact. And we still have some steps to go, but I think the foundation and pathway is there of where we can.
Absolutely. Question for you, Sarah. With the creation of food created from cells, is the data in that process available? And if so, what is the data to ensure that it's safe to consume?
Yeah, absolutely. So Australia, like many countries, has a really robust regulatory framework around certifying food safety. And actually, the Vogue, the company that I mentioned that we've invested in, is going through a regulatory approval process. They've gained approval in Singapore to supply food there. But yeah, one of the things that Australia takes really seriously is our safety, our quality, our biosecurity more broadly. And so those systems and processes exist. Like many of our systems and processes, they're getting challenged by technology, kind of outpacing sometimes where the regulatory environment is. But that's really one of the things these companies have to take on is, how do you find that balance of building something that's world first, but working with the existing system to embrace the processes we've put in place to ensure safety. For, ultimately, it's something that people are eating. We're not building software that people are just using. It has that real, health and safety impact, and so that needs to be taken incredibly seriously. And I think the companies and the regulators and industry are working together to bridge those gaps.
For sure. We've got a question here that's about robotics, but I'll expand it to both of you. What support is available to farmers to actually evolve their current tools and machinery to adopt robotics, but also other ag techs? What support is there for people to take on these new technologies that we expect to come with quite large costs?
Do you want to go?
Yeah, happy to go first. So I think there's a lot of government support incentives to give emerging technologies a try, which is really exciting. I think there is a lot of startups around Australia that are specifically focused on agriculture and the food supply chain and wanting to get involved and support out with farmers and growers, and then receiving venture capital support for those companies to be able to build out and grow. We also offer a robots as a service rental model as part of our business model. So farmers and growers can rent a robot for a monthly fee to get technology in their shed quickly and to get them getting the support they need without having to spend very, very large capital expenditure on a single machine. So we're very conscious about finding ways that we can reduce the entry barrier as much as possible and to ensure that we can support farmers where we can. Australia is just a huge producer of food, and it's something we could really lean into and provide support. There are also some accelerators and other smaller pots of funds to help explore different new ideas. But yeah, there's a variety of options out there, and we're also thinking about it from our side on how we can help.
My answer is maybe slightly different. You know, as an American that came to Australia, truly, well, I came for my partner's job, so I'm told to say I came for love. But I have stayed for the opportunity in climate smart agriculture, and I truly, hand on heart, can say that. Australian farmers are the second least subsidized in the world, and so we actually see these companies building commercial solutions and Australian farmers wanting to adopt them. And I think that's really unique versus other countries, especially America, and it's really what we're going to need for the future. These things have to make economic sense and they have to make environmental sense, and that's what a lot of companies, you know, like Nicole's are building. And I think that part, in addition to the government support to, you know, overcome some of those barriers, that commercial piece we really have to continue to focus on because it is a strength of Australia.
Amazing. That's all the time we've got today. I hope you all learned something about ag and how the future of our food will look. Pass it back to Jess.